Thanks for joining us for this week's live Q&A. Today we're going to be swapping out one hive body for another while leaving the brood nest and the flow frames here in this position. So we're simply swapping all the woodenware of the hive. Now there's multiple reasons why you might want to do a swap out. One is you might be transferring a Langstroth hive to a Flow Hive. So you might have acquired a Langstroth beehive and you want to swap it into your nice new Flow Hive and get the functionality of easy honey harvesting out of your hive. Now, another reason is perhaps your woodenware needs replacing. So that's another reason why you'll be swapping the woodenware of a hive while keeping the bees. Now there's a few things to consider while you're doing it. One is the location of the hive. So the bees will really geolocate to one spot. They're amazing little navigators and they're able to really know where their hive is. So when we do the swap out, we want to put the new hive back in this place here. So this particular hive is actually still fine. The only reason we're swapping it out is because we want to put this beautiful artwork that Bella did back in the apiary here. And we're choosing this hive to swap out because this was a tung oil finish, which looks beautiful at first, but 2 years on now, it's looking a little mildewy. Now we could give that TLC right here in the apiary with some oxygen bleach or hit it with some elbow grease and sandpaper and get it back to looking good. However, what we're going to do today is just simply swap it out, which is a useful thing to know how to do. If you've got questions, put it in the comments and we'll get back to answering you, but we're basically going to be pulling this hive completely to pieces. While we're at it, we're going to be having a good look in the brood nest and also what's going on up here in the honey box. So, first of all, you need to make sure you've got a good bee suit. Now, this morning it's been raining, so I'm expecting the bees to be a little more grumpy than usual. So I'm going to make sure I have my gloves handy. Or if you're new to beekeeping, certainly be wearing your gloves. Make sure there's no spots where bees can get in. You don't want bees getting inside your protective wares because that's just not comfortable. Now I'm going to blow a little smoke on my hands to mask my own scent. That's said to help a little bit. I've also got my box of tricks here. I've got my J-Hive tool, which I'm going to need to take all of the frames out. I'll put my little magnetic clip there, and that's a good spot to keep the hive tool. I've also got the bee brush, which might come in handy, and I've got some oil which we'll put in the tray at the end to make sure that the hive beetles aren't going to take over and seize any opportunity while the hive is in its repair stage if we do damage any comb as we go. So lots of nice cool smoke coming out. I'll blow that into the entrance. I'm giving it 3 really good puffs right into the hive, and I'm going to leave this right at the front. Now that's a great thing to do, and if you want them at their calmest, then you'll leave it for a few minutes for them to change tune from being perhaps more protective to being a bit more in a preparation mode. It's said that the bees change modes. Another theory on that is that it masks the alarm pheromone. So while they're trying to say there's an intruder in the hive, it doesn't get passed around to the other bees. So first of all, the gabled roof comes off and we'll put that aside. And we could just take the whole honey super off and get straight to the brood, but I think what I'll do is I'll put the Flow Hive super right nearby here, and we're just going to start transferring the flow frames across to here. So we're simply going to be taking them out of the top here and putting them in there. So while we're doing that, I'll show you how to, first of all, we're going to take that off because we're manipulating these frames, and we're going to take the inner cover off. Now, as said, if you're new to beekeeping, wear your gloves because as soon as we open this hive, you may have quite protective bees coming out to let you know they don't want you in their hive. So we're going around prying off the inner cover. If you've got questions, chime in and we'll get to answering those as we go. If you're just tuning in, we're doing a swap out, swapping the woodenware of this beautiful artworked hive that Bella did for this hive here, while keeping the flow frames and the bees with the brood frames down the bottom in the same location. Okay. So to get a flow frame out, you're going to need to also remove that key access cover, and then there's 3 lift points. So I can go under here. We've left just enough room to get your chisel in and give it a lift. Now that's usually enough, but if it's not, you can also give a bit of a lift there. And the J end, just like any frame, goes under the other end, and away we go. We can then gently, the first one's always the one you go more gently with. Oh, we've got a fair bit of honey there. Wasn't quite expecting that. We're in our winter here, but some nice capped honey. So that's really good to see. Won't take them much effort as the spring flowers hit to fill out the rest of the frame here to the window. Beautiful. So a simple process of just putting these into this box here. So we're going to drop them in. We're going to leave the bees on it because they're going back into the hive anyway. So while you're thinking of your questions, I'm just going to pick up these frames, have a look at them as we go, and drop them in to this box here. Beautiful. That was some more nice honey. Now this one's got a little bit of a mix of capped honey and nectar. Give us a thumbs up if you can see the glistening nectar in this area here. That's a really good sign that they are collecting from flowers. There's a little nectar flow on. They're bringing that back into the hive, which will keep the hives going. So in our winter here, there's no need to feed bees. We often get quite a good little nectar flow during winter. Often the paper bark, which gets set off by the rain. And looking at this side is pretty neat. That's what it looks like when it's uncapped. Look at that. You get beautiful wax they're drawing out beyond our flow frame moving parts, and they're just starting to cap it in some little sections. Very cool. Now if I wanted to get the bees off and get a better look at that, it'd be a good sharp shake, but we'll save that for the brood frames. Okay. Might put that one in the window side so we can watch them capping. Flow frames, it doesn't matter so much whether you mix them around, because they you don't tend to have big bulges that squash together and provide those spaces where beetles can take hold of. So you always want to have gaps between moving between comb faces so that the bees can get in there and work. If there's places that are too small, say that you've only left a 2mm gap, and bees can't work that, hive beetles might get in there and lay thousands of eggs, and then there's a bit of a situation that the bees have to deal with and you might have to deal with. So great idea to make sure that doesn't happen. Doesn't usually happen with flow frames, but it's more in the brood nest that we need to watch out for that. So that one's pretty empty, just a bit of nectar in this section here. Can you see that shining nectar down the cells? It's a beautiful thing to see. And these frames have been around for many seasons. You can see they're quite waxy. The bees have coated all the flow frame parts in wax, and we've harvested from these multiple seasons. Okay, we're dropping them in, and it's a simple process of moving along, dropping the rest in. Today we're doing a swap out, swapping all of the flow frames and all of the brood frames into a brand new hive body. Actually, it's an old one we've just taken back to the workshop and gave in the beautiful artwork a bit of a touch up. More honey there, great to see. Look at that. Beautiful. Any questions coming in, Trace?
Yes, this is a good one actually. Questions coming in. While you're doing this, can the queen fly away?
Okay, so the queen is down here in the brood box. Now there's a queen excluder here, which you can see this grid. She can't come up through that. So she's not going to be in this top box unless she squeezed through when she was small or there was a gap in the box or something like that. But she'll be down there in the brood nest where she's supposed to be. Now when we get into there, which will just be in 2 minutes time, then the queen, yes, she sometimes does fly away, but it's pretty rare. They say that the queen can't fly when she's in egg laying mode, but I definitely have seen her fly when you're playing with the queen and she just takes off. And you're like, hang on a minute, you're not supposed to do that. All the books say you can't. But there you go, she can. And so it's a neat idea to be a little bit careful and mindful about how you manipulate the hive so that you don't actually orphan the queen from the hive, because sometimes she won't make it back again, and then you've got a queenless hive. Hopefully the bees will raise another one, but they don't always. Beautiful. So that's all of our flow frames. Now that last one, a little trick to getting the last one in is actually to use this face to maintain the space between the frames. So squeeze them all across so first of all you can get it in. Let's see if we can fit that now. There we go. Now if you roll it around like this, so you're putting it halfway down, then rolling it into the box. And you'll also need space at the back here by just pulling the frames across with the end of the J. And another thing we really should be doing is taking this door off so we're aware of what's going on here and not squashing bees between here and the metal strip at the bottom. Now I can hear the bees are getting a little bit agitated, but there we go. So I'm dropping this down now, maintaining the space all the way. And that's what you want to see, is a nice flat window like that. All of the frames pushed forward towards that window side. So there we are, successfully swapped the flow frames into a new box. And now it's a case of doing the same thing with the brood box. I always like to have a couple of spare frames with me just in case we break one. It's a handy thing to have around. You could take that comb away and just simply give them another one. Okay, next we can take the super right off. Any questions as we go?
Yes, he's just wondering, Dylan's wondering what kind of smoker you're using in the smoker. Or
Okay, I just tend to use what I have around. What you want to avoid in smokers is, say, newspaper with lots of print on it, because there's chemicals you're putting into your hive you might not want in there. So in this case it's just the organic sugarcane mulch, which we've been using to mulch the garden, so we've got a lot of it around here, and that seems to work quite nicely. And thanks for the reminder, we should make sure our smoker is still going, give it a good top up, and that way it won't go out while you're doing your swap out. There we go, lots of cool smoke. We'll give a little bit more to the bees because it's been a while. It is a bit of a grey day. It was raining this morning, so when the bees are a bit grumpy we just use a bit more smoke, and that does help. Okay, next we can take this excluder off. Now the queen we were talking about earlier could be down here in the bottom box, and she could even be on the underside of this excluder. So I'm just peeling that up slowly. And you're always having a little look on the underside, and occasionally you'll see her just there. And I can't see the queen, so what I'm going to do is just lean that up against the hive, and that way if she did happen to be there she could walk back in. Now there's a couple of different ways of going about this. I could move the parent hive over and set up the new hive in this position, and the advantage of that would be when the bees are returning home they're going to the new hive already, rather than building up where we're trying to move the bees and frames from. But you can go about it either way. In this case what I might do is move the hive over and then put the new hive right in its place. So to do that, I'm just simply going to pick it up, being mindful not to yank on the landing board or you might snap it off, but my hands are going to go underneath it. The brood nest isn't quite, we've got tight quarters here because we're in a row of hives, but the brood nest isn't as heavy as a honey super because they've got a lot less honey in there. Now we're going to put the new hive right back in its place. Isn't that a beautiful artwork? Very inspiring to get up there, have fun with the family, painting your hive. Okay, so now it's just a case of shifting these frames to there. So we'll do that by standing on the other side here, adding a little smoke, and then pulling out our first brood frame. And while we're at it, we'll have a look, make sure all is well down here in the brood nest. Any questions?
Great. Sid, I just have to point out on Facebook this morning, everyone's tuning in and telling us where they are, and it's so good. We've got like Colorado, Canada, and Nova Scotia. We've got Buenos Aires, Missouri, lots of people in Australia, Brazil, Bangladesh. It's so good. Everyone's just putting it in the feed this morning, so I just had to shout that one out.
Wow, so cool. Let us know whereabouts in the world you are. That's fantastic.
So good.
It's so neat to have this global community or to learn from. I've learned so much and all helping each other. It's super cool.
Seeds, can you just explain again, a couple of people maybe have only just tuning in, they're just wondering why you're doing this. Why are you changing out these boxes?
Okay, simply because we wanted this beautiful artwork back in the apiary. It got removed for some reason, we gave it a little touch up, we're putting it back in, and there was nothing really wrong with this box, although we chose this box to swap out because it does need a bit of TLC. It was one we used tung oil on 2 years ago, and you can see what happens with tung oil. It does tend, if you don't give it any more TLC, it tends to get this mildew where the mildew feeds on the remaining oil left behind. So for that reason, we don't recommend using tung oil on hives unless you're in a very dry climate and you're prepared to really keep up your oiling schedule. So we tend to go for things like this. This is a few years old, and that's a decking coat, which is designed to keep wood looking like wood outdoors. So it's just a simple swap out, one box for another. There's multiple reasons why you might want to do that. One is you've got an old hive from somewhere and you want to swap it into your Flow Hive. Another one is you might have a box that's got some damaged woodenware, perhaps there's rot getting in, and you want to swap it out for new woodenware. So, useful thing to know how to do. It's a simple process of swapping the inside into the inside of the new one.
And so do you have to put them back in the same order that you're taking them out?
So that's a great question. The answer is ideally yes, but if you're not going to put them back into the same order, just make sure you're not pressing comb against comb, because that's where the small hive beetle might take advantage to lay lots of eggs, which could cause your hive to turn into a beetle nest instead of a beehive, which isn't fun to clean up. Okay, so going sideways first always, J-Hive tool under the end, and we're just coming up slowly like this. The first frame's always the hardest, where you need to really take some time to come up slowly so you don't roll bees between the two frames as you pull it up. There we go, and that's exactly what I wanted to see. Beautiful brood pattern, look at that, a lot of brood there. It's all going to turn into nice baby bees soon enough. So they're in their metamorphosis stage. They've been through the larvae stage, and then they've spun a silk cocoon around themselves. The bees have helped cap that off, and they're growing their wings, their legs, their eyes, and everything they need to be a worker bee. A bit like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And each one of these cells is will have a young bee. In fact, here's a young bee here. You can tell by the lighter and of course a little bit smaller. So that one's just emerged out of one of these brood cells and joining the hive to start work. And sometimes you get to witness them coming right out of the cell. In fact, here's one just chewing its way out just there. Give us a thumbs up if you can see that little head just starting to poke its way out of the capping. Chew, chew, chew. Like a butterfly coming out of its cocoon. Beautiful. That'll probably take 15 minutes to come out from that stage there, so we will just keep on with our hive swap. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 4th frame in. So I'm going to try and keep them in the same order unless there's a reason to swap them out. And that just means there's no issue with comb getting squashed against comb. Now once we've got the first one out, we can then go sideways like this, which makes it a lot quicker to lift that frame out. And the whole process can speed up from here. If you're in a hurry, you could do it quite quickly. But we're going to keep looking at the brood comb, give a bit of a brood inspection while we're here. Got an interesting frame here with a bit of a mix. Because these are naturally drawn, all we've done is given them the wooden surrounds and they have done what they like to do. And in this case, they've put drones on the edge here. So there you have drones in their pupae stage, and then you have the worker brood here. So worker brood, drone brood. Give us a thumbs up if you can tell the difference there between the two. The drones stick out proud because they're a bigger bee, like little mounds. Neat. Okay, and that one's going in beside that one. And so on. Any more questions?
Yeah, so if your goal is to have consistent honey with your hive, would adding additional supers help with that?
Okay, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Now, if you're harvesting with the Flow Hive, adding additional supers might even slow down when you have flow frames ready to harvest. Conventional beekeepers are always adding supers for batch processing at the end of the season. And I used to do that, adding more supers, which is boxed to collect honey, on top of the hives. And then once you know you've got a whole lot full, then you dedicate several days to the processing, which was the old way of pulling out all the frames, taking them to the processing room, and you've got this centrifuge there to spin the honey out of the frames and so on. Now, with the Flow Hive, it's a little bit of a different strategy where you can, if you want to, just harvest whenever you see the honey is full. Now, adding a whole lot of boxes will actually mean that honey might be spread out between more boxes and you may not get to that harvest point as quick as you'd like. So some people do add more honey supers. In fact, up in Canada, there has been people that have added 7 flow supers high on their hives. Now in Canada, it's a little bit of a different situation where the whole flowering season is compressed into just a few months. So the hives really boom. They store a lot of honey. In fact, people in Canada boast that they can fill a whole super in a single day, which is just unbelievable. The fastest we ever see it around here is a week. So there is different strategies depending on where you are in the world. Some people like to run multiple brood boxes. I find that annoying because it's hard to find the queen and so on. I don't find they need the space, not in this climate here. So I tend to run the hives in a very simple fashion with a single brood box, a single super, and I find that works well around here. Local knowledge is good because you might find that you need more stores than that to survive a long cold winter, in which case you might choose to run a second brood or a second super just to get more stores in your hive for a long cold winter ahead. So local knowledge is a great idea there. Now, if you're keeping your hive smaller with a brood nest and a single super, single brood box, single super, then that will mean come springtime, your bees may run out of room. And my favourite method, rather than adding more boxes, is to take a split. And if you don't want another hive, somebody else surely will. So all you're doing then is taking some of the frames out of the brood nest like this and putting them into another hive, looking after it, and they'll grow from there. We've got lots of videos showing you exactly how to do that at thebeekeeper.org and on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Okay, always long answers. Got a bit of pollen here, which is cool. You see their bee bread up in this section. It's always good to see good pollen stores, because pollen is their protein, the nectar is their carbohydrate, so they need both for a balanced diet, and they also need a balanced variety of proteins. Like if we only eat one protein source, we get sick. It's the same for bees. So beekeepers will often, in the commercial sense, be moving their hives around specifically to find good sources of pollen for their bees, and they'll do that in between good nectar flows to give them a good, healthy pickup. It's like going on a bit of a health kick, putting them where there's nice flowering species that have good pollen, good balanced pollens for them to eat. Okay. And they of course aren't eating the pollen, they're eating the bee bread, so they take that pollen back into the hive and stuff it into the cells. They add their enzymes and special sauce, and then they let it ferment into a good sourdough. Now this is an interesting frame. If you have a look here, what you've got is a comb guide that's dropped out and it's diagonally across. So that's the comb guide that's usually in the top. And the bees are gone whatevs, and they've just used the frame anyway. So that's great to see. A good reminder to make sure you use a couple of little nails to hold your comb guide in, or a couple of dobs of glue to avoid that comb guide just dropping right out. Now we might leave that one on the edge, because we could choose to swap that frame right out and then put a new one in. Now I don't think I'll do it right now, because there's a good nectar is still a little bit scarce, and they've just got beautiful stores there which I want them to keep at the moment. But in a couple of weeks the spring's going to hit here, and we'll be showing you how to simply take some of the old comb away to make room in the brood nest. It's a good piece of spring management. So that one goes here, and I might have had that the other way around. Actually, I just need to make a slight bit of room so I don't squash this comb against the edge, just by pulling these frames over a little bit. There we go. Okay, the bees are getting a slight little toey, giving me little warnings now. So what we might do is add a little bit more smoke. As I said, it's a bit of a grey day. It was raining all morning. Not the perfect day for beekeeping, but we do it for the camera. Okay.
So you sort of touched on this a little bit, but Liz is asking, she just bought a Flow Hive and just wondering what happens when it does get overcrowded. Does she have to buy another one?
So your options are add more boxes to reduce crowding, or you might just be able to take some comb out of the bottom and enjoy that honeycomb, and put the frames that are now empty back towards the centre, and that way there'll be some more fresh room for the queen to lay, and you do that to limit the hive from swarming. But as you say, you could also take a split by taking frames from that hive, putting them in another one, and if you don't want that hive, then somebody else will. So it's a great thing you're doing. Or you could even find someone who's getting started, and they might want to come and take that split from your hive, which will help you, because we're reducing the numbers in your hive, limiting the chances of swarming, and it'll help them because they get bees to get going with their hive. So that's another great option. So you're making space one way or another basically when they get crowded, by either adding more boxes or taking a split, so taking some of the bees away. Okay, adding a bit of smoke because I can tell the bees aren't particularly loving my slow pace here better get on with it and shift these frames across to the other hive. So more brood there, good to see. Lovely, lovely. I haven't been looking for the queen, but she's obviously here with a lot of nice brood. Keep those questions coming in. It's fantastic to have questions from all over the world. Also great that you're chiming in, letting us know whereabouts you are. It's so interesting for us. There we go.
And of course, Seeds, we always get the questions coming in about like you not wearing gloves and how come, what's the logic of a novice needing gloves? Why would they sting a novice and not you?
It's more about learning about when they're going to sting. So I know these bees are getting a little bit toey. I'm taking a risk now they will sting me on their hands. I don't mind the odd sting on the hands. I don't enjoy it on my face, so I'm wearing a good bee suit. And so it's a trade-off for me, the odd sting versus having the dexterity of not wearing the gloves. Now, if this was a grumpy hive and they were starting to sting me, I'll put on my gloves. I always have them at the ready. As a new beekeeper, there's a whole lot you're learning. So to make the process enjoyable, wear your gloves until you really get used to how bees behave and when they're likely to start getting stingy. Now this frame is neat because we've got brood in all different stages. I might shake the bees off here just to show you those stages. So diagonally across the hive like this when you're shaking it, so the bees go into the hive, and if the queen was there, then she would go into the hive rather than out. So give us a thumbs up if you can see the shining white larvae there. So it's the bees in their caterpillar phase, if you like, although they're stationary and they're being fed by the worker bees. They'll be fed royal jelly at first, but they'll quickly change over to bee bread, and that will be the genetic switch through epigenetics to turn them into a worker bee. If they were fed royal jelly for their entire larval stage, then you would find it would turn into a queen. So every single one of these could be a queen if they were fed the mother's milk royal jelly.
So a couple of people wondering, can you show, if you've got one on that frame, I'm not sure, the difference between a worker bee and a drone?
Okay, now this frame doesn't have any drone brood and I can't see any drones, so we'll see what the next frame holds. Okay, let's see if we can find you a drone. Now, what we have is some comb that's gone a bit wonky here, so we'll fix that up as we go. This can happen whether you're doing foundation or whether you're doing naturally drawn, but one of the drawbacks, I guess, of naturally drawn, the bees are getting a little bit toey. Trying to sting my fingers there, so I could put my gloves on. Now, you are more likely to get a little bit of wonky comb with naturally drawn comb. But for me, the benefits far outweigh the cons. Letting the bees do their natural thing is fascinating. And here you've got size cells that are drone size, but they haven't made drones, and you've got worker brood in this section here, looking really good. And on this side, we've got a lot of brood, but we've also got a little bit of wonky comb that I'll show you how to fix up. So I'm going to shake these bees off right into the new box, because what we're doing today is showing you how to transfer the bees from one box to another. Shaking them in there, and look at that brood pattern. She's a keeper. Love it when the queens just do that clockwork brood. You'll always get a few holes like this in it, which is normal, and that's important for the heater bees that'll go down the cells, disconnect their wing muscles, vibrate and warm up the comb. So that's perfect. Again, we've got some good brood on this side, and we also have a patch of drone brood. Now, keeping a lookout for a drone for you, but that is the drone brood and that is the worker brood. Some more drone brood over here, and this little bit of comb in between two frames. Now, if there's a gap between two frames, if you've left a gap, they're likely to fill it with comb like that. So simply taking that away from the hive, don't leave it out for the bees to rob. I'll put it over there and I'll take that away when I go. There's another little bit here, and that's just a little bit of honey. If there was some brood in it, you could put it up in the roof cavity, take the plug out, and the bees would look after it till it emerges. Okay, so if I wanted to, I could give this little area a bit of a scratch and encourage them to fill it in rather than draw another piece of comb in between. So if I do this, they'll get to work fixing rather than doing another piece of comb over the top. There we go. Makes a mess, but the bees are very good at cleaning up mess. Neat. That one goes in here. And I've got a couple of frames to go. That's not correct actually. It goes the other way around. So I can tell that if you have a look here, you can see I would be squashing comb against comb. That's what we don't want to be doing. So one of these frames is the wrong way around. I suspect it's the previous one. I've muddled it around. So to fix that up, I'll grab this, I'll give it a spin, and let's see if they go together nicely now. There we go. Now we've got plenty of room for the bees to work both comb surfaces. Any more questions coming in?
Yeah, Peter, Dylan's wondering, where would you recommend getting your bees from?
Always locally. That way they're acclimatised to your area, and you can't really ship bees too far, so you'll have to get them locally. And pretty much in all parts of the world you can get bees. Wow, look at that. This hive's going to absolutely explode. Most frames have a really good patch of brood, which I wasn't expecting being our winter here, but they are on the turn. If I shake the bees off, you get a good look at that. Look at that, beautiful work there by the queen. And if you have a look at the other side, more worker bees ready to emerge in the hive and start their work. This is naturally drawn comb, so the bees have just done their thing, and you do get these interesting little artworks here where you've got a hole through the comb there. Doesn't really matter to me. You're letting the bees do their thing, as long as it's serviceable and you can pull the frames out and do your routine brood inspections.
Cedar Beau's wondering, he's tuning in from Cairns here in Australia, just wondering, is it true that when bees make naturally drawn comb that they will make more drone sized cells than worker cells?
Yes, in a way, because when we give them wax foundation, beekeepers are going, hang on, drones are pretty useless, they're not collecting much honey, let's put in foundation that is worker size. So we put in 5.3mm foundation if we're putting in wax foundation or plastic foundation, and that's your worker brood size more or less. In fact, it's slightly bigger than bees would naturally do, but that's come from humans going, hey, let's make slightly bigger worker bees that will forage harder. Anyway, we put in these foundations, and that means they'll mainly do that until they tear some of the comb down and make a drone section. So yes, you will get a few more drones in your hive by allowing them to do whatever they like, which is what we've done here. We've just put in wooden frames, given them some space, nothing in them. The bees have done their thing, and this is what they've done. Having said that, different times of year, you'll have, like, typically at the end of the season, you'll have hardly any drones, say come your autumn and into winter. Then as the spring hits, and spring's just around the corner here, they'll start producing more drones, and their job is to spread the genetic material around. So the drones will fly off to a drone congregation area, and they'll be there waiting for a queen to fly past. And it is an important job because we need that mix of genetics in order to allow our bees to have the genetic traits to survive. And it's going to become more and more important here in Australia as we have the Varroa spreading out across the country. We'll be fostering those genetics of hives that are able to look after the Varroa themselves. So we've just got a couple more frames to go in, and that is it.
Right. Jimmy's just asking whether it says on our website that we ship from Illinois, and do we have a base there? Jimmy, we don't. That's just where they ship from. We're actually based here in Australia. Beautiful northern rivers just up the road from Lennox Head and Byron Bay. So, but they will ship. If you buy from the US, they do ship from within the US. So thanks for asking that, because we get that asked quite a lot. Cedar, Madeline's wondering, loving the lives, but also wondering if the diatomaceous earth is a good deterrent for hive beetles.
Now, I haven't played around with diatomaceous earth much. The way it works is it's actually a very sharp crystalline structure which gets into insects' crevices and then starts to cut them apart like glass. So with beetles, it can work well for beetles. However, when you get the diatomaceous earth wet, then it doesn't work anymore. Now, these hives here are facing a direction where often we get driving rain coming in, and we do get moisture coming into the tray, so it's not that useful here in this location. At home, I do have a lot of hives that are sheltered from the wind, and I don't get any water in the tray areas. So I should really test it, but I've never actually used it myself. But let us know how it works for you.
Herbert wants to know, when should you not open the hive anymore for winter, and also when should you stop taking the honey out?
So here where we are, we never really get a winter as far as the European honeybee Apis mellifera is concerned, because we have quite good foraging all through the winter time, and it doesn't really get that cold here. But if you're in a place that has really cold winters, snow, etc., then you'll find there'll be a time when the bees stop really foraging and flying, and that's when they're really bunkering down. Now, in that stage, ideally they have enough stores to survive through till the next time the flowers are out. Now, if they haven't got enough stores, you are better off managing the hive and giving them something than letting them die out through the winter. So generally, you're not opening the hives in those cold times. The queens stop laying, there is no brood nest, there's basically just a ball of bees huddling together, consuming honey stores to survive through till the next spring. So in those climates, you generally try not to open the hive, but an exception is if you find the hive's really light, which you can lift at the back and feel how light it is. They might have consumed all of the stores, or you might have known they were a bit hungry and never got around to feeding them prior to the winter. And in that case, it could still be useful to open the hive and feed them. So you choose one of the warmer days, or you might just decide to give them some fondant, or you might decide dry sugar. Feeding is the go by pouring some in an area where the bees could access. Now, if the plug's out in the inner cover, you probably haven't got that situation because you might have insulation up here for the long winter. You might have to pop the inner cover and feed them in some way to let them survive through to the next spring. But otherwise, you're trying not to open them in those really cold areas during the really cold times. So, and the second question was?
Oh, did I have a second question?
there was a second part to that question.
Oh God, look, I'm having memory loss. Soph, can you remember what my question was? We'll come back to it.
No worries.
Oh, it was about the hive beetle, the Damascus. Wasn't that one?
We did that one.
Okay, let's ask another one. This is one. Where's the best place to put your flow hive? Which area is a good place for a flow hive?
Okay, so as far as broadly the areas, where Apis mellifera is incredibly adaptable, from desert kind of areas right through to tropical rainforest, right through to really snowy areas, right through to really dry arid areas. So pretty much everywhere in the world where there's flowers, you'll find bees. And then when it comes to keeping them, you can keep them on your rooftop in the city, you can keep them on balconies in the city, you can keep them in urban backyards, or you can keep them in the rural landscapes. Basically, they just need access to fly out and forage in, say, a 6 mile, 10 kilometre radius, and that's where bees will do well, picking up the nectar and pollen and bring it back into the hive. So when it comes down to actually situating your hive in your yard, what you're trying to do is position them. Probably one of the main things you're looking at is giving them a position where the flight path isn't going to bother anybody. So see how these hives are pointing out? We don't have anyone walking past this side of the hives, because that's where the bees are coming back laden with nectar and pollen. We don't want people to get bees in their hair and getting accidental stings and so on. So that's probably number one when you're situating your hive. Now, number two will be full shade or full sun. I'd always go full sun over full shade, because it helps keep pathogens like chalk brood away. And you might think the hive will get too hot, and while the hives do get hot, bees are amazing little air conditioners. They'll go and collect water, take it back to the hive, fan it, and through evaporative cooling they will cool down the hive and make sure the brood nest is staying at just below our body temperature, which is what they need to raise their young. So if you had the perfect ideal world situation, you would put your hive there with a flight path where they can get up and away and not bother anybody, and the hive would get full sun in winter and afternoon shade in summer. But in this case, we've gone for full sun all year round.
Right. So what happens when bees die? What happens to the bees in the hive? Do other bees eat them?
Okay, so the undertakers, which is one of the many jobs of a worker bee's short life. So in that 4 to 6 weeks, they go through many roles, but they might become an undertaker, which is taking out bees that die. Because they don't live very long, they are dying inside the hive. And they'll also be dying outside the hive, but the ones that die in, they'll drag out. And you'll see bees, because they can carry almost their whole body weight, you'll see them grabbing onto a bee and flying away. And they'll usually land a few meters away and try and pick it up again and fly a few more meters. And what they're trying to do is kick out the dead, keep them far away as possible, so that if there is any pathogens, they're ejecting them out and away from the hive. Some great questions today. I'm going to swap these last couple of frames in and put the hive back together, and then we'll answer a few more questions. So the last couple of frames are the hardest, because the quarters get tight, or should I say the last frame. So what I'm going to do is push all the frames across with the hive tool by putting it down against the box wall here and against the end bar of the frame there, and just levering it across. So you can see them all moving across. What I'm doing is making enough space to put the last frame in. And if you're a Langstroth hive keeper, you'll notice that the 10 frame Langstroth size in the world is a bit tighter, which is super annoying. And what we've done is made a little bit more space. And once everything's waxy and properlised all over the end bars like you see here, you'll appreciate the extra space. So I'm dropping that last one in there, and even so, there still is tight to push the last one down. So a lot of people are running 9 frames in a 10 frame typical laying. In our Flow hives you can fit 10, which is good because the spacing then works out very nicely. So that's all the frames back in. All we want to do is share the excess space between the two sides and make sure we don't have comb squashing against comb, and that way your bees will be able to manage all of the comb surfaces and keep those pesky hive beetles under check. Okay, levering across, making some space, and away we go. Now the next thing to put back in place is the excluder. However, there is some bees left behind here. Now, I wasn't particularly looking for the queen and I didn't see her, so she could be here inside this box. So before you go and put the queen excluder in, you want to shake all of these bees in to this hive. If you're just tuning in, we're doing a swap out today, simply moving bees from one hive to another, which is useful if you want to freshen up the woodenware or if you want to transfer one hive type to another. So I can have a quick look for the queen there, just in case, but I could miss her, so we're shaking these in, just like that, till there's barely any bees left, and then we can put that box aside. Okay, let's now put our excluder in place, which is this one here. Like that. Giving it a bit of a wriggle, shuffle any bees out of the way, and then on top we're going to put our super. Now we're not using our super lifter today because we're doing a hive swap, and while we could have used it to swap the brood frames, we would have had to manually move the flow frames anyway, so we chose just to go with the old method. Okay, but now I've got to lift a heavy box. Now, if lifting heavy things is hard for you, you might decide to leave half of them out, or leave all the flow frames out, put the super on and move them one by one. There was quite a bit of honey in there, and it is the larger size box, so I'm expecting it to weigh a fair bit. So I'm bracing myself, getting a good lift, and then we've actually got quite a lot of bees on the underside, so we might brush them off first. It's not too bad. If you could pass me that bee brush there. I just noticed a whole lot of bees hanging out in this corner. I didn't want to squash them when I put the box down. Okay. Good. And there we go. Lining it up as best you can. Putting that box in place. Now we have our hive back together. It's just a case of putting the inner cover back on, gabled roof and the windows, and there we have a successful hive swap out with this beautiful hive that Bella has painted. Any more questions coming in as we close up the last little pieces of this hive?
Yeah, so he's just wondering, Tarek's just wondering, just any tips on trying to encourage the bees to go up to the super. They're saying that it looks like they're not even going through the queen excluder. Not quite sure where Tarek is.
Yes, so a queen excluder can sometimes discourage the bees from moving up. You could decide to remove it, and that would allow the bees to move up, but bearing in mind that some queens will lay in the flow frames and some won't. So it's a bit more advanced, you'll need to check that. So to err on the safe side, you just leave it in place, and you'd wait for the bees to build up a big enough population, then moving up into the super and starting to use it. Now, if you do want to get a bit more activity on your flow frames, dial back a couple of weeks and we showed you how to scrape some of the wax off the brood frames, mash it into the flow frame surface, and if you put that on the window side, you can enjoy watching them recycle the wax around that area of the frame and use it to coat the flow frame parts. Now, you still won't get any honey stores unless you have a big population of bees that are really filling that box, coinciding with a good nectar flow where they can really put some stores away in excess that you can then share in too.
Right. Okay. You've still got a few people have noticed on your base there and wondering if you're going to shake those ones in on the hive that you've just swapped.
Ah, yes, true. That's a good point. Thanks for tuning in on that one. there could be a queen there. So let's have a look. Now if you've already got your queen extruded back in place and your hive back together like this, then the appropriate spot to shake those bees off would be onto the front face or somewhere near the entrance. So if the queen did happen to be there, she could hopefully crawl back into the hive. Next, we're putting on our gabled roof, and there we have it. Bella's beautiful hive back in the apiary and looking good. Don't forget to put the covers in place. There we go. And there's also the key access cover up here, which can go right in place like that. And that's it, our hive is back together. Now, as you pointed out, you've still got a few bees here. I could just let them fly back in. I've got most of the bees in the hive, and I can see the queen isn't actually there. So you could either shake them off or just leave them to fly in of their own accord. And that's it. Obviously you could do it a lot quicker if you weren't slowly going through and looking at things, but that's how you do a hive swap out. Any more questions?
Yes, so he's just wondering, what size hive is this?
So this is your 10 frame Langstroth size hive. So hives always vary in size a little bit, so it'll generally fit most 10 frame Langs if you want to put a conventional brood box in the mix. And that does 7 flow frames in the top, so we call it a Flow 7, and it matches 10 brood frames down the bottom here. Have a look in the window there, it looks beautiful with glistening nectar in the flow frames. And look at how the bees have drawn out their wax, completed all the cells, and soon they'll be capping that off. And if there's excess honey, we can share some too, which is the beautiful thing about beekeeping. You've got this synergy of pollination, pollinating the surrounding area. A hive like this could pollinate 50 million flowers in a day when it's in full swing, which is just extraordinary. And they also store an extraordinary amount of honey, which I love. And I love all the different varieties of honey that come in. So stay tuned in the coming weeks. We'll be showing you the springtime flavours that come into this area, which are a real joy. Really light colours will be coming in, and ones that really have those flavour, lollipop flavours, really amazing floral bursts of them we have here in the springtime. And in the wintertime we get the more darker multi-tones of the paperbark and the melaleuca down here. Time for one more question?
Yeah, see, if you're wanting, you've just moved a hive literally from one box to the other, but we've got a beekeeper and they want to move their boxes 10 kilometres away. What's the best way to do that?
Okay, so moving hives, you've got the geolocation issue. Now bees are so clever at their location that if you move the hive just a short distance, they will go back to the old location. But if you're going 10 kilometres, there isn't any issue with that because you're outside the foraging range. The forager bees won't remember any landmarks and they'll be forced to reorientate to the new location. So to do that, you'll be getting up in the early morning before light. If you've got a bit of a bee beard on your hive, then just waft a bit of smoke. You're not blowing it into the hive, you're just wafting it around. The remaining bees will go into the hive. A little tip, if it's still very dark and you need a torch, use one with a red light because bees don't see that frequency and they won't come bothering it on your head, if you like. So if you've got a head torch, a red light setting is great, which often they have. Now, once all the bees are in, you're using an entrance closure, which our entrance reducer can be turned upside down for a closure. Now, you might want to check that the hive's in alignment and there's no spaces for bees to get out. You can just put a rag in the entrance or some steel wool or anything you like, but the idea is you're sealing the bees in there. Then you can come back in the light of day, take off your gabled roof and put a strap right around your hive before then picking it up get a help from a friend to lift that onto your trailer or pickup, just to then drive it to your new location. And the idea is you're transporting it in the cooler part of the day and making sure they've got plenty of ventilation, which you can do here by taking the tray out of the bottom. They'll have plenty of ventilation then, and they won't overheat or starve of oxygen while they're in transport. Now, you then need to put that down in the new location where you want it to be, and you simply open the entrance, and at that point, depending on the hive's genetics, you might want to clear out while the bees do their thing. Some hives are totally chill when you open the entrance, and some are more defensive. So you, in your bee suit, you open the entrance, walk away, let them reorientate to their new location, and away they go. Now, if you're moving them a shorter distance in between just across your yard and the 10 kilometres, so just a few metres across your yard, you can creep the hive a few metres a day and the bees will follow. If you're moving them, say, a bigger distance, then what we tend to do is use what's called a reorientation technique, where we simply just move the hive in one hit, say 100 metres, 3 kilometres away, whatever it is. Then the bees will remember that surrounding area and go back. So putting a rag or a really leafy branch in front of the entrance will help, and you'll get 95% of the forager bees reorientating to the new spot, because they come racing out of their entrance with the enthusiasm to go foraging. They crash into this new thing and they go, something's different, something's changed. And that is the trigger for them to then fly around and check for new landmarks. And you see a whole lot of bees doing circles and coming back, and that's them reorientating to that new location. You'll still get 5% of bees back at the old site, which you can either leave to their own devices, they might find another hive if there's one there, or you can put a box there to collect them and ferry them to the new location every couple of days. Now, the jury's out which hive moving technique you want to use. Another one for that medium distance move is you move it more than 10 kilometres or 6 miles away, leave it there for a month, and then bring it back to the new location. So quite a few options there. If you want good training videos on this, have a look at thebeekeeper.org, or have a look at our Facebook page and YouTube channels on moving hives. Thebeekeeper.org is a great online course made to take you from square one right through to a deep knowledge in beekeeping. It's got amazing video training material from experts from all over the world, and it's a program we put together to also raise funds. So it's free to try, and also an amazing fundraiser for the bees, for Habitat, and a lot of projects we support to help the bees. So have a look at thebeekeeper.org. Thanks for tuning in. Same time next week. See you then. And thanks to all of you that are chiming in and helping answer all of the comments below. Thanks again. See you next week.